Who would have thought that as the not-so-super fantastic Jurassic July is coming to a close, that we would be relying on a Marvel movie of all things to save it from being a complete disaster? Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
Push the goddamn button!
Push the goddamn button!
You heard what she said.
Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Woman, Human Torch, and The Thing face their most daunting challenge yet as they defend Earth from Galactus and the Silver Surfer. You know, a lot of people ask me almost every single day why I continue to watch these movies, why I continue to review them, if I know that I'm not going to like them. Well, the simple answer to that question is, I don't know that I'm not going to like them. There's always a chance, like with this movie, that they might actually do something that is worth my time. That's what going to the movies is all about. You're going to have disappointments, you're going to have surprises, it's all part of the cinematic experience. And for years, there has been no one more critical of the MCU than I have, and rightfully so. They deserve that criticism. For years, all I've asked for is for Marvel to stop being so reliant on things like CGI, Easter eggs, cameos, and cringe comedy that make a majority of their modern films very forgettable and formulaic. All I've ever really wanted from them is for them to tell me a story. More specifically, a self-contained story that does not get bogged down with the typical cinematic universe nonsense. Well, I'm here to tell you today that much to my surprise, Fantastic Four First Steps feels like a first step in the right direction. Pun intended.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
You see, we are at a point right now in the comic book movie genre where just another MCU movie is just not going to do it for me. I needed Marvel to do something just a little bit different. I needed Marvel to get out of their comfort zone and give me something in this universe that I haven't seen yet. Now, anyone who's been watching me for any amount of time knows that I'm not the type of person to proclaim that Marvel is back. Because to me, too much damage has been done to the brand overall over the past several years for me to believe that. But looking at this movie and this movie alone, looking at this movie in a vacuum, I have to be honest, there were moments when I was watching this movie in the theater where I completely forgot that technically it is an MCU movie. It felt like one of those one-off Marvel movies that we used to get in the genre before Disney monopolized everything. It does in fact have its own distinct feel and vibe that for me made this movie a much more entertaining experience than anything I've had in the genre lately. And I've said this many times, I am not the biggest Fantastic Four fan to begin with. And that may have contributed to how I consume this movie. In a lot of ways though, I always felt like this was one of those comic book properties that just never really translated well to live action. Well, I'm man enough here today to admit that I was wrong about that, and it just needed to happen under the right circumstances. And as much as it pains me, I do have to give credit where credit is due when it comes to Marvel Studios, and yes, even Disney. Now, do I have confidence that they are going to carry this momentum into future projects and keep the same energy? No, I do not. Because unfortunately, a multiverse black cloud called Avengers Doomsday is looming over this film as well. But again, if we are looking at just Fantastic Four First Steps, I think if they made more movies like this, it would go a long way to repairing the perception of this brand overall. By the end of this film, all I could really think about was that I'd much rather have a straight-up sequel to this movie than have them try to integrate this Fantastic Four team into the greater MCU. And I know it'll never happen because crossovers need to happen, money needs to be made, but it should happen. It turns out that the best way to adapt the Fantastic Four is to set it in its own unique universe. A universe with a retro aesthetic that I think did the material and the movie overall wonders. The great thing about it was there was no obligation in this movie to connect things to a bigger story. It's very much its own thing. It is a somewhat back to basics approach when it comes to the superhero movie, and it was a breath of fresh air for me personally. We do not get a straight up origin story in this movie, and honestly, we did not need one. I thought they handled it perfectly in a way that will appease both diehards as well as the casual fan who might not be as knowledgeable about who these characters are. From the very start, they make them feel very important. They deliver exposition on the team through in-world media reports, and I thought that that was a great way to go. In a lot of ways, this is an established universe of its own, with about 4 years worth of them fighting evil that we don't even get to see. I mean, we hear tidbits about those conflicts throughout the film, just enough so we know what was happening, but they also don't clutter the film up with a bunch of pre-established characters that we have absolutely no connection to.
I understood that reference.
The biggest established side character to have a major role in this film was Mole Man of all people. And the movie actually finds a way to make his inclusion essential to the story being told. As far as the Fantastic Four themselves, I'm on record as saying I was not sold on most of these casting decisions. And in my heart of hearts, do I still feel like there could potentially be other actors out there who might have been better suited for the role? Sure. But I have to admit, by the end of the movie, I wasn't thinking about any of that at all. Even Pedro Pascal, who I've been very critical of, a lot of people have been very critical of, due to his overusage. But I truthfully bought into him more and more in the role as the movie went on. And the same goes for Joseph Quinn as Johnny and Ebon Moss as Ben. I was not sold on either of those either. And I think the thing that changed my mind is the fact that they actually feel like real characters in this movie, and not just caricatures. Caricatures like a lot of other comic book movie characters tend to feel like. You see, each of these characters has their own little story to help you get just a little bit more invested in them. And thus, it helps you to buy into the character building and the family dynamic that this movie is trying to sell you. It's actually so simple, I'm not sure why Marvel has had such a difficult time pulling this off in the past. It's literally storytelling 101. Reed Richards has doubts about being a new father while also carrying this guilt about the accident that gave all of them their powers. Johnny kinda has a desperation to be taken seriously, as he attempts to take matters into his own hands on more than one occasion throughout the course of this film. Ben, to me, was probably the weakest of the four characters in this movie. He does have this kind of shallow subplot where he is trying to be somewhat normal, but obviously his appearance won't allow him to do that. It's not exactly groundbreaking material here, we've seen stuff like this before. And I also didn't feel like the full potential of the Thing as a superhero was utilized all that well either.
Put some effort into it!
Everyone else in the group's powers are put on full display, and they are each given time to shine, and it was fun to watch. As far as Sue Storm goes, she is very much the emotional core of this film that kind of holds it all together. She kind of plays this triple role in the film: a pregnant mother, a superhero, as well as a mother postpartum, trying to still be a superhero. And I felt like she held her own from a character standpoint, and I thought Vanessa Kirby, from a performance perspective, brought a little extra something to the role as well. The family dynamic is obviously a huge part of this film, and it was one of the things I was kind of worried about, because we don't have a long-standing relationship with these characters, so that dynamic could have ended up feeling a bit forced. But they actually found a great way to navigate their way through that, both with the chemistry between the actors, and by the fact that the story itself is putting them through the ringer, both professionally and personally, so they very quickly have to deal with all of this together, and it quickly galvanizes the group in the audience's eyes. There was more than one occasion throughout the course of this film, much to my surprise, where the more emotional moments actually resonated with me. Maybe it's because I'm somewhat of a new dad myself, so it's made me kind of soft on these concepts, but they were effective nonetheless, and they definitely resonated with me personally. Which leads me to the biggest revelation of this movie, that being Marvel finally realized how to deliver a situation that raises the stakes and makes them feel very real. Well, as real as a giant space god potentially devouring your planet can feel.
What is real? How do you define real?
But it helps Marvel Studios when you do not undermine that threat with comedy bits. And this movie, for the most part, avoids doing that. In fact, I felt the comedy overall was scaled back to a point where it wasn't cringe and it actually felt appropriate in the moments that it was used. As far as Galactus goes, listen, he is very much a presence in this movie. I love the way he looks. I love overall how he was presented to us. Probably could have used a bit more build-up for such a cosmic level villain like this, but I did feel like the time that we did get with him was pretty effective. He's not a generational villain by any means in this movie, but he was interesting enough to where I'd love to see more of him in a more expanded capacity later on. And even the new female Silver Surfer got her time to shine. She got a little bit of backstory. She was heavily involved in one of the better action set pieces in the film, a scene that involves a chase that goes from Galactus' ship to a black hole, and there were moments throughout the course of it that were quite thrilling to me. If I had to point out negatives for this film, I do think there is some lingering issues with the CGI visuals in this film. There were times where the CGI and green screen work was very noticeable, and it does take you out just a bit. A CGI baby comes to mind. And there were other times throughout the film where it actually looked a lot better. Inconsistent is the best way to describe it, but I guess inconsistent is better than downright awful. Bottom line, for me, Fantastic Four is easily, and I'm talking far and away, a much better made movie than the other two films that make up the big three in July. And a big reason for that is that it feels like an actual movie from Marvel for once.
I don't believe it!
It's not as gimmicky, it's not as desperate, there's almost no nostalgia bait to speak of. So props to director Matt Shakman, who managed to somehow make an MCU movie that doesn't feel like more of the same for once. He was put in an almost impossible situation for a multitude of reasons, and I think he actually made the best of it. And yes, Michael Giacchino's score is epic, as some people have already pointed out. This is the first Marvel movie that I have genuinely enjoyed in a very long time. In fact, I think the last time I gave anything Marvel related a overwhelmingly positive review was Werewolf by Night. I was interested and engaged the entire time I was watching it, and more importantly, I didn't hate myself for watching it when it was all over. It was pretty much exactly what I would expect from a Fantastic Four movie, and in that aspect, I think it is more than deserving of the pleased Palpatine.
Good. Good. Y'all be cool. Shut up.